Hello guys, welcome once again to another episode from Fourth World Car. This channel exists to explore a simple question. What happens when a country decides it wants its own car? Not a rebadge, not an import, but something it can call its own. As we move forward in these stories, things become more interesting. Today I'm looking at a very peculiar car, one that was once described as a dream come true for the Iranian automotive industry. This is the story of the swift horse, Samand.
سمند به سرعت باد است و به آرامش نسیم. مجهز به ترمز ABS، مجهز به سیستم تعویض کننده لوح فشرده، با امکان دسترسی به صندوق عقب و دریچه تعبیه شده برای قرار دادن چوب اسکی، همراه با خدمات ویژه کارت طلایی و ضمانت 3 ساله خودرو. سمند، یک تجربه برای احساس امنیت. سمند، روابط عمومی گروه صنعتی ایران خودرو.
Samand was not just a vehicle, it was an idea, a statement, and a dream shaped by politics, pressure, and ambition. You might ask why I call it a dream come true. The answer is simple. For decades, the ambition was always the same: independence, designing and manufacturing a domestic car. That goal was never abandoned. The methods used to sell these cars were often strange and controversial, and explaining them properly would require an entire separate discussion. That's something for another time. For now, let's focus on Samand and the story behind it. Around the year 2000, IKCO officially introduced what was promoted as the first Iranian car. Initially, the intention was for Samand to replace Paykan. Well, that never fully happened. In a strange turn of events, Samand instead became a derivative to the Peugeot 405, and that shift defines the entire story. But where is the unexpected origin of the car? A British company called First Automotive was designing a vehicle for a Taiwanese manufacturer. Once the design phase was completed, the Taiwanese company went bankrupt. The British firm, having already invested heavily in development, began searching for a new customer. They offered the design to both Chinese and Iranian manufacturers. During that period, both IKCO and SAIPA were under intense pressure from the government and from the public. South Korean brands such as Hyundai and Kia, despite being younger companies, were already far ahead of the Iranian automotive industry. Public frustration grew. People were asking a simple question: what are you doing? The demand for a domestically developed car became stronger than ever. At the same time, a Malaysian manufacturer introduced a car under the Proton name, built on a Mitsubishi platform. That example mattered. It showed that smaller or developing automotive industries could build their own cars by relying on existing global platforms. The question became inevitable: why not us? IKCO decided to move forward by building the new car on the Peugeot 405 platform and accepted the British proposal. With assistance from South Korean, German, and Austrian engineers, the design was reworked, particularly in terms of ergonomics, since the original concept had been tailored for Taiwanese users. For a long time, the car was advertised as an imaginary replacement for Paykan, but once the deal was finalized, the narrative no longer held. The platform choice made one thing clear: Samand was not replacing Paykan, it was replacing Peugeot 405. Before I start talking about the car, I want to clarify a point. When I said this model could be considered a replacement for the Peugeot 405, I didn't mean it actually replaced it. As many of you know, the 405 was produced in Iran until just 3 to 4 years ago. What you are seeing on the screen is the very first model of Samand. This model was introduced in 2002. The first thing that stands out is the size and shape of the rear lights, which resemble European sedans from the 1980s. The large rear bumper gives the car a rather bulky rear appearance. At the front, the rectangular headlights and a bumper that blends smoothly with the hood create a clean, cohesive front fascia. Keep in mind, this is the early Samand model, the one that is no longer in production. I'm trying to give you a sense of how the Samand's journey began. This particular version was later replaced by the Samand SE, which remained in production until 2017. As I was filming, I even came across a typical Iranian traffic accident. You know how it is. Reckless drivers exist everywhere, and many treat public streets as if they are racetracks. Over time, Samand evolved into several variants. One of the more common versions is the Samand LX. From the rear view, you will notice updated taillights and a more refined trunk design. Everything feels more aligned and intentional. At the front, the vertically slatted grille and minor bumper tweaks give the car a more modern, polished look. If I had to guess what inspired this facelift, I'd say it reminds me of the 5th generation Volkswagen Passat, especially in its proportions and front lighting. The LX remained on the market until 2021. So I decided to begin with the very first Samand model, and I was lucky enough to find one. To my surprise, the car was remarkably intact, no major accidents, just a couple of small incidents over the years. As always, I adjusted the seat and jumped behind the wheel. The interior was extremely basic. The AC controls were mechanical, simple sliders for temperature and fan speed. If you look at the lower part of the center console, you'll notice a set of buttons. That's actually the car's built-in computer, which was considered a real innovation back then, although it wasn't working in this specific car. Back in the day, it could warn you about maintenance needs, oil changes, if the door is open, etc., using a voice warning system. I have to admit, the wooden trim on the dashboard and doors, even though it's obviously faux wood, looked quite nice for its time. If you are wondering about the price, this more than 20-year-old car is currently listed for around $3,000. Alright, let's move on to the Samand LX. I waited for the owner to bring his car out of the parking lot. Samands generally have two engines. One is the XU7, which we have already talked about. The other is the EF7, which was claimed to be the first Iranian-designed engine. This 1.7-liter inline-4 engine was developed with the help of German engineers. The EF7 was designed primarily to run on CNG or compressed natural gas, but it can also operate efficiently on gasoline or what we call petrol. Even in extremely cold weather, it can start directly in CNG mode, which is a big deal in this type of engine. This 16-valve engine was engineered with a precisely mapped computer system to reduce noise and vibration, especially when idling. Whether it truly worked as intended, well, we should ask the owners. In terms of emissions, the EF7 is capable of meeting Euro 5 environmental standards. Again, I adjusted the seat and sat behind the wheel. To be honest, I was shocked. I didn't know the interior was almost identical to the early model. The only noticeable change was the AC control unit. Oh, and one more thing, the seat was electronically adjustable. I could slide it back and forth using a button. Quite an achievement. Unfortunately, I didn't get to drive either of the cars myself. I let the owners take the wheel and I simply enjoyed the ride. And I can tell you that the older model was perfectly fine. As I mentioned earlier, that's what a swift horse is all about. Production of Samand LX stopped around 3 years ago. More basic versions of Samand had already ended 7 to 8 years earlier. IKCO still produces other derivatives of the Samand family, models that deserve a separate episode altogether. Despite production ending, Samand has maintained a solid resale value. A clean example produced 3 to 4 years before the final shutdown with no major accidents typically sells for around $5,000 to $6,000. One important detail often overlooked is export. IKCO has exported Samand to several countries including Senegal, Azerbaijan, Iraq and Syria, along with a handful of other markets. Only specific models were exported, but the fact itself remains significant.
And you bring the people on the march, and they're coming for you.
На капоте Саманда нарисован конь, потому что Саманд в переводе на русский значит жеребец. Слегка
الرحابة والسعة، التقنيات المتطورة.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please consider subscribing. The stories ahead only get more interesting. See you next time.